Hello, this is Brad Wild here in Oakland, California, KOAK, and we're going to be flying down to Santa Barbara. It is early morning, about 5:15. No sun coming up yet, but we'll see that shortly. But in the meantime, we've got cold and dark. We have fueled up the aircraft just to save that time. That's not all that exciting. And I've got my aviation flashlight on. So I'm going to go ahead and get some ground power going and wait for our light to come on, and then we can get things rolling. So we've got it available. Go ahead and turn on our batteries, and then a beacon and maybe nav lights just to let people know we're home. And then we can go ahead and start our APU. And while we wait for that to come up, I'm just going to go ahead and neutralize these, otherwise I'll be scolded by the co-pilot. Still waiting for that to come up, and I can go ahead and turn this on in anticipation of. Alright, so the APU is running. Turn on my APU bleed and turn the packs on, get a little air going. Make sure our electrical pump is on fault. I'm not sure why that's important, but and then while we're up here, let's get our ADARUs going. This to status, system to 1, and then each one of these mode switches to nav. And as soon as we're prompted, I'll click the enter key on our keypad, and 7 minutes until we're aligned. And I think I'll just go ahead and turn the dome light on so we don't need our flashlight anymore. But that is a nice thing to have, definitely. So we can turn on our radios down here, some floods underneath our console, and our lights. Still waiting for our map to come up. But we can go ahead and begin programming our FMGC via the MCDU. Just to review our maps, here is the Oakland airport. We are parked right about here, and we're going to taxi over here to runway 30. Although here in X-Plane it says 29 on the runway, but doesn't really matter. I assume the map is correct, actually. And then we're going to be using the Coast 7 departure, or SID, so we'll be taking off in this direction and then looping around over Point Reyes and then down along the coast of California, turning southwest. People don't realize that San Francisco is actually quite a bit west of places like Santa Barbara and LA. So we'll be flying down to Gavita as our transition point. Just to take a quick look at the ILS approach into Santa Barbara, we'll be coming off of Gavita, Golf Victor Oscar, and intercepting the localizer at Goyed and 2,700 feet. And while we're here, let's take note of our frequency for the localizer of 110.3. So I'm just using the Airbus default livery, much to the dismay of people who love to have all kinds of liveries. And we'll align our IRS, put in a cost index of 45, which is a good medium CI. I'll save my cruise altitude until after I get my flight plan in, and we'll go ahead and get our fuel taken care of here. Like I said, I fueled ahead of time. So let's put in our departure. Again, runway 30. It's correct here. And here's our coast 7 and our transition, Gavito, I forget. And we'll go ahead and insert that. And now time to put in our approach, which is ILS 07. No star for Santa Barbara. And I'm not going to put in a transition because this is already a transition point in our SID. And no transition then. Back to our flight plan. Insert that. So here is Goyed, where we intercept our ILS. So I just need to get rid of this discontinuity, clear it, insert, looks good. We can check it on our forgot to turn off our external power here. We can send them packing now. Saw the flashing light. And let's just go through our flight plan and see how that looks. So out of Oakland, and on into Santa Barbara. So I don't see anything too unusual. All right, let's finish programming our computer here. Back to our init screen, we'll put in our cruise altitude of 28,280 to be exact. That looks fine. Over to performance and put in our V-speeds, transition of 180. Flex speed of 44. Flaps and trim at 2.0. And while I don't know what the pressure is in Santa Barbara, I do know that my transition altitude will be flight level 180. So now our FMGC is programmed. Our doors are closed and We can go ahead and call our tow. Do want everybody to sit down. Arm our emergency lights. So he's ready to go. And we're going to be taxiing down this green line over to this direction, so I want to kick my wheel to the right.
Park brake off.
You can see San Francisco over here, KSFO. Alright, we should be good. We'll send our guy packing.
Park brake on.
Now we can get our engines going. Start with our fuel pumps, all 6. Mode switch to start.
Starting engine 2.
Get things spooled up. By the way, I have my own checklist, which is a lot more thorough than the one that's in the airplane. So that's the one I'm following. While we're waiting, I'll put this back to ARC. And we can also get this to standard. There we go. Alright, and we'll start.
Starting engine 1.
Get another one going. And we'll wait for these lights to go off before we kill our APU. Maybe turn on a nose light here. And things are stabilizing. So let's go up and turn off our APUs. Electrical pump off. I don't quite understand that, but anyway, get our window heat going. Turn this back to normal. Oh, one more thing I want to do while I'm down here is turn on my transponder. Should probably wait till I get out to the runway, but I'll put this on above and get some flaps in.
Flaps 1. Flaps 2.
Arm the spoilers.
Spoilers arm.
So we're ready to taxi. Now I have silenced our public address system, so I don't hear the flight attendant giving final directions. And while we're headed out, I'll go ahead and turn on my landing. Alright, I'm sorry. I'll put on my auto brake to max. So we'll be taking off to the northwest, then make a slow turn to the west, and then finally back to southeast. This is the beta version of 2.6. And except for a couple of frame rate problems, it's been pretty good. So here we are at the end of runway 30. It says 29, but that's an X-plane mistake, I feel. San Francisco straight ahead, KSFO. And we've got the Bay Bridge out here that we'll fly over. So a few things we need to do. Get our lights on here. Turn off our packs. Need a little bit more light here since I've turned off the dome light. And we've got 2 notches of flaps. Spoilers are armed. Barrow is set. And we're ready to go. Parking brake off. Start our clock. Again, I have one finger on the G key for the gear and one on the 4 key for the spoilers. Set our initial altitude here of 3,000 feet while we wait for ATC. Okay, we've been cleared for takeoff.
Power set. Knots. V1, rotate. Positive climb. Gear up. Spoilers disarm.
Go ahead and start my lateral
Autopilot
navigation.
1, cross-check.
There's our climb indicator. Turn off our nose light. Turn our packs back on.
Standard Barrow cross-check. Passing flight level 020. Speed checked. Flaps 1.
You can go ahead and notch this up to 190. And we are at 3,000 feet.
Speed checked. Flaps 0.
See the Golden State down here? Yeah. We'll go ahead and increase our speed. I'll take it on up to flight level 280. See San Francisco off the left wing. And the sun just coming up over Oakland. Headed over the Bay Bridge. And X-Plane certainly does not like all those lights. Better get back in the cockpit. We'll just stay in the cockpit. Not getting great frame rates right now. So our first turn is coming up. Still below 10,000, so our lights are still on. Don't need to see all these airports. You can see how we will be turning to the west and then southeast shortly. And we're at the 10,000 foot mark. Let's go ahead and turn off our landing lights. Sun coming up in the east there. See the Golden Gate off the left wing. Sun coming up. Bay Bridge right behind the airplane. We're over Tiburon right now, and we begin our first turn. Out over the Pacific. Well, we're back up in the 40s now. So I think the secret is just staying in the cockpit and not looking at all those lights. There's KSFO off in the distance. Again, sun coming up. And we're coming up on our transition altitude. And at that point I'll leave you for a while until we get close to our top of descent. We begin our turn to the southeast. There's our flashing arrow. Go ahead and go standard to that. And I'll leave you just after we take a look at the map. Let's see. sectional here. You can see we flew out over Point Reyes, and then now headed south, San Francisco, just to the southeast of us. So, back in a few minutes. Approaching our top of the climb, I'm going to turn our profile on. I learned this from my friend Steve. Flew this airplane a number of times and never knew about it. So it paints a nice little profile here. So the engines are spooling down. You can let people move around the airplane. And now we're at our cruise altitude. Notice our top of descent was almost perfect. So I'll check back in a little bit later as we get closer to our top of descent. Otherwise it's kind of boring just looking out on a dark landscape. So we're getting a little bit closer to our top of descent, approximately 20 miles out. Coast of California. And somebody asked to see what the difference was between HDR turned on and off. It is on now, so I'm just going to stop and reset the rendering so that you can see what it looks like without. Okay, and here it is without. So you don't get that nice blue haze, and the water doesn't look all that exciting either. I don't even see the reflection in the lakes off in the distance. So I'm going to go back and turn the rendering, or turn the HDR back on. So here we are with it back on, and things just look so much better, especially the ocean and so on. Better get back in the cockpit. Coming right up on our top of descent, and our altitude that we want to set at is at 2700. I'll probably want to set it a little bit lower once we get closer. You can see there 10,000 foot mark here.
We are close to top of descent, sir.
So we're 3 miles out from our top of descent, and I can really press that button at any time I want. So you want to get the little single finger, and I can turn off our profile. First of all, I need everybody to sit down. I just want to be able to monitor my engine. There we go. You can see that they're coming back to idle. And on our FMA we've got a managed descent, throttle to idle. Doesn't look like we need any drag at this point. So the next thing that we need to be concerned about is our transition altitude and switching from standard baro to whatever the baro is at Santa Barbara. And we're coming up on 18,000 feet Flight level 180. Nice and bright out. And we've got our flashing barrow. There we go. And we can go down and program our barrow here. We just put in standard barrow. But it's a good practice to get into. Chances are it wouldn't be standard barrow. Our winds calm, 15 Fahrenheit, or I'm sorry, 15 centigrade. And I'm watching our speed here. We did have spoilers on for a minute. So back with you at 10,000 feet. And we're coming up on 10,000 feet. See our little hashed circle. And our speed is coming down. You can see the speed bug headed south. Get that ready for approach phase. Kind of a hazy morning. Another view. And we're now down to 250. Begin our descent below 10,000. And I can turn on my ILS at any time, and that's what turns on the little guide slope and localizer bugs, which you'll see as we get closer to the localizer. Alright, I'm coming up on the Golf Victor Oscar VOR, and I'm going to go ahead and start my approach phase.
Approach phase activated. Radio altimeter alive.
Terrain.
We are kind of close to these
Terrain.
1,000.
I don't know. That's the fault of the route that the FMS charted or not. And we're being
Spoilers
asked
half.
for more drag. You can see that our guide slope and localizer
2,500.
bugs have been activated. Looking for the airport. Don't have it in sight quite yet. That's Highway 101. And we're coming up on Goyad, where we will hopefully intercept the localizer.
Autopilot 2, cross-check.
So approach button clicked, our second autopilot engaged. We have reached the green dot.
Speed checked, flaps 1. Spoilers retracted. Spoilers arm.
And we'll overshoot the localizer a little bit. And if I remember, this ILS is a tad off. The localizer is a little bit to the left, so I may need to disengage at the last minute. Let's see what happens.
Speed checked. Flaps 2.
And we need to put the gear down after flaps 2.
Gear down.
So we have to come back quite a ways to pick up the localizer. And notice our localizer bug swinging across towards the middle again. And I can see the runway just off to the right a tad.
Radio altimeter
We'll swing
alive.
around. And we're now on our guide slope. Go ahead and arm our auto brakes.
Speed checked. Flaps 3.
It's hard to tell if we're going to be on the money or not. Looks good from here. Go ahead and dial up our go around.
Go around. Altitude set. One thousand.
Yeah, we're going to be a little off to the left. Disengage autopilot. And hand fly this in.
500.
Maintain our guide slope here. A little below.
400.
Land green checked.
It's a short runway.
300.
100 above.
Too low, flaps. Too low, flaps.
Minimum.
Speed checked. Flaps full.
And we overshot that. Alright, I'm not very good at hand
100.
flying this thing.
50. 40. 30.
Oops.
20. Retard. Retard. Retard.
Not yet.
Retard. Retard. Retard.
Ground spoilers.
Retard.
Nacelle. Reverse green.
Well, that was a little sloppy, but need to hand fly this aircraft.
70
along.
knots.
Oops.
70 knots.
Yeah, I've never understood why that doesn't disengage the auto thrust. Anyway, not the best of landings. But I'm going to let it stand for now. Ooh, look at those brakes. I'm not proud of that. but again, short runway for such an aircraft as the Airbus A320. All right, I'm going to call it quits for today.